Alright, in the midst of making yet another road case for a musical instrument, for a Civil War instrument, see my other videos on that, I today received this thing that I ordered on the Office Max website. It's a Linon brand. I have no idea if that's a US company, Chinese, whatever. It's a roll cart with 6 small drawers and 2 larger drawers. That's their model number. And it's measuring 20 3/4 inches wide, 15 1/3 inches deep, and 40 1/2 inches high. It's supposedly all wood construction. Oh, it's made in Brazil. Okay. I was looking for something that would allow me to store my large collection of nuts, bolts, screws, lots of different kinds of wood screws, sheet metal screws, deck screws, all that kind of stuff that's currently in little boxes in piles and jammed into various cardboard boxes. I want to have one place to see if I can fit it all in there and have it a little more organized. This is the way this thing showed up. Just a total trasher. It's been taped over. It looks like the bottom busted out. Somebody slapped a bunch of tape on there. I'm not really confident that everything's going to be in here, but maybe. I figured I would do kind of an assembly review video here. Well, the shipping label says this came from a Linon facility in Eden, North Carolina. So apparently it's a US company, or if it isn't, then they've got a US distribution center. Alright, with the box top cut off, I'm left with a jumbled mess of what looks like just plain pine boards with a little bit of milling on them, packed in styrofoam, at least on the sides and one end. I almost get the impression there may have been styrofoam pads at the other end that have since been lost in transit. I don't know that for a fact. There's a cardboard pouch with a bunch of what look like plastic drawer runs, and 4 plasticky looking casters, bag of little dowels and wood screws, or sheet metal screws really, another bag of screws, one box that has only that one piece in it. Okay. I think the first thing that needs to be done is an inventory. Alright. So there's the big mess after I pull all the parts out and try to organize them. Most of the pine parts seem to be in decent condition, but I found at least 2, maybe 3 that jumped out at me as having significant defects like this. Big knots and cracks. There's 1 or 2 other things similar to that that'll have to be fixed. Or I suppose I could request replacements, but it might be easier just to pour epoxy into those holes and let it go. So I think I really do need to do an inventory here. Hopefully the manual makes that easy. Well, as expected for something like this, there is a printed manual, although it's just Xerox pages stapled weirdly at a place that isn't a corner or an edge. So there's a parts list. Okay. And an exploded parts diagram, hardware identification, some cautionary comments, assembly instructions. Looks like this will actually be a fair amount of work to put together. But ooh, the savings. Alright, inventory completed. There are 8 drawer bottom panels made out of masonite or pressed hardboard, whatever you want to call it. 2 large drawer back panels, 4 large drawer side panels, 2 large drawer front panels, 6 regular drawer back panels, 12 regular drawer side panels, 6 regular drawer front panels, 2 panels, which one's called the front panel, one's called the back, or I'm sorry, the front rail and the back rail. The back one looks like it's not supposed to show, and this one's contoured at the front, so obviously it's supposed to show. There's a single structural rail, a large masonite back panel, one of those, the top panel, and then the right and left side panels. That's all the wooden pieces. There's a bunch of plastic slides for the drawers, the 6 casters, and the supports into which they plug. About 40 small brad nails, 12 wood dowels. Well, there's actually 22 of them, but the bill of material says there should be 12. Somehow 12 doesn't seem like enough. Maybe it really should be 22. I don't know if it's a misprint in the bill of materials. Anyway, there's 22 of them. There are 64 or 66 3 by 25 millimeter screws. There's supposed to be 64 according to the bill. There are 12 4 by 30 millimeter screws. That exactly matches the bill of material. Then there are 12 4 by 25 millimeter screws, which are not mentioned in the bill of material. So, is bill of material mistaken, or did somebody just throw the wrong things in the bag? Don't know yet. There are also 2 long strips of masonite, which I think are just for reinforcing or protecting the contents of the box. But they look like perfectly good masonite I could use on some other project, so I'm keeping that. So there's a really long crack along this one drawer side. It's not really structural, I don't think anything depends on that, but I don't want it breaking loose or flopping around and jamming or something. So I've just completely filled it with epoxy. Let that set overnight. And then this is a big crack, again in a non-structural area along the top of a drawer side. This is really a part that should have been rejected by quality control, I would think. I just filled it as much as I can with epoxy. So let it dry overnight. Okay, the next morning after the epoxy's dried, I've sanded it, and that crack is all filled in. I left a little bit there. It's a sort of a dip. I didn't want to over sand it, but I think that's pretty well stabilized. On this one that had the big knot in it, the epoxy did sag just a hair, maybe a 1/16 of an inch in up here, but otherwise it filled it pretty well, and I've sanded that. Filled it really well through here. So I think those parts are good to go. By the way, regarding something I found in the Linon manual, it says that they have some fairly limited support for this product, and maybe for all their products for all I know, but at least for this product it says something to the effect of they only will provide replacement parts for defective or damaged parts if you do it within a 30 days of purchase, which is pretty short. You know, people could easily buy something and not get around to it for a few weeks. But then they say, well, that's only assuming they still have them in stock. So if you bought one of these things and they happen to be out of stock, by the time you discover there's a problem, then all bets are off. You're on your own. And, you know, obviously there has to be limitations on how long they're liable for things, but still. The main thing that bothered me was they said that it's all at your expense. So yeah, they'll, according to their write-up in the manual, if you discover a broken or missing part, you have to pay the postage to get the replacement part to you. They're only going to provide the part. I've never seen that before. Usually these companies, if they realize they made a mistake, it's like, boom, you know, it's on its way to you right now. Sometimes they even expedite it. These guys are kind of just saying, yeah, we'll send you a part that cost us 50 cents to make, but you got to pay several dollars or more to, you know, to get it to you. And I think that's pretty shameful. I was looking over their website, and this product is not on their website, even though it was being advertised heavily by Office Depot. And I kind of wonder if this is sort of an orphan product that maybe isn't even anything like what these guys normally sell, or maybe it's a product they used to sell and they're just being dumped through Office Depot's advertising. But it doesn't speak well for the brand Linon. So the first step in the instructions is to put on the I keep forgetting what they want to call these, the plastic slides for the drawers on the right side panel. And those have to be hammered in, and they recommend a rubber mallet, but I think a regular hammer would work if you're careful. These just sort of tap in. These pieces just jam into the pre-drilled blind holes, and they caution that you're supposed to start from the outer ends and then tap towards the middle. Okay, those are all hammered on now, and the only other step on this is to put in a couple of wood dowels up near the top, which presumably are to help hold in the top panel. And I want to glue these in, so I hope they fit reasonably well so I don't have problems with them later when I'm actually putting on the top. I think that does happen very quickly in the instructions, so if I move along, the glue will still be soft by the time I have to get these to align. So those are glued in, and they fit pretty firmly. I don't think there will be any alignment issues. You couldn't wobble them around even if you wanted. And I've done likewise to the left side panel. Plastic slides and 2 dowels. Here I have the front and back rails, or whatever they're calling these things. I should probably check. Parts 5 and 6. I want to use the right nomenclature. Back rail and front rail, I got it right. So these have to have these little pieces pushed in for the casters, and they also have to have dowel rods put at their ends in the blind holes that are there. Okay, those are hammered in. Dowels are all in. This one's got a bit of a defect on it. There's a lip molded into the piece that the other three don't have, and the hole is not countersunk in the wood to accept it. So I'd only noticed that after I went in, then I couldn't get it back out in order to countersink the hole in the wood. So it's just going to have to be the way it is. I'll break the part if I try to take it out. All of these pieces are anchored with a single pocket screw. I think that's what those are called, where they just go in at an angle and the heads are countersunk into the wood. Now I have to put the other side on similarly. Okay, those are screwed together now. I'm hoping this thing clears the drawers. Offhand, I guess it must fit in between the recess on the bottom of one of the drawers. Okay, those went together. I'm a little bit concerned about the dubious nature of the very few screws and how little they go into the wood. I think it's going to be one of these situations where it's the sum of the parts, not the parts themselves, which is always the case anyway with these things, but I think this would have very little rigidity, very little strength, but putting the back panel on will make it way stronger than it is right now. So that's the next step. And although the instructions don't mention it, I'm putting a small bead of glue all the way around where the back panel will fit in. It can only help. I'm sure it won't hurt. Okay, the back is on. Nailed in with these little brad nails they give you. There were actually a few spares. They wanted 10 on each side and 4 on the bottom and top. I actually put 1 extra, so 5, 5, and 11 and 11. They gave me 5 spares, so I might as well use some of them up. Roughly 3.5 inches or so between them, but a little more spacing on the bottoms and tops. So that should assure its stability, that it's not going to lean over sideways or something. Don't need my parts identifying tape on there anymore. The instructions had said to put the casters on at the same time I put the fittings into the wood, but I thought that was kind of nuts, that it would only complicate the subsequent assembly, since I wouldn't be able to lay this down on that side for any part of the step. So I just snapped them in now. As usual with these kind of things, they're sort of a bugger to get in, but they do eventually go in. Casters seem to work all right, although they are as likely to slip on the smooth concrete floor as roll, especially if they're not castered in the right direction, if you will. But they're there and they work. And I should mention one sort of gotcha on these nails, and the instructions don't say anything about it, but these side panels are aligned to the top panel and to the bottom panel, or the bottom rail, by their cut dimensions from the factory, and I'm sure they wanted to leave a little slop to make sure the back panel would fit in between the milled inlays, but in this case it resulted in them being a bit on the wide side. You can see the gap there, and there's a little less of a gap on the right side, but there's still a gap almost that wide, and there's hardly anything to put the nail into unless you put the nail right on the edge of the masonite, which is not great. So I put them in whatever that is, let's see, about 3/16 of an inch, and held them with a set of pliers, needle nose pliers, aiming that way, so they would kind of enter into the wood right on its milled corner and then go diagonally into the wood, so they'd be something to grab them. And hopefully, you know, with all these nails, there will be adequate strength in the masonite that these, you know, they wouldn't tear out. Plus I've glued it, so I think most of the strength here is going to be from the glue and not from the nails. Anyway, so it's time to start building the drawers. Each drawer has a front panel, 2 side panels, a rear panel, and a bottom panel made of masonite. And they're attached solely with screws, 1, 2, 3, 4 holding the back panel on, 1, 2, 3, 4 holding the front panel on, so 8 screws per drawer. And they show the wrong kind of screw. They show the kind with the threads not going all the way up to the head. Not sure that really matters, but they didn't furnish that kind. And I might put some glue in here just for the heck of it. And then finally you slide the masonite bottom panel in, put the back panel on, and to anchor the masonite to the back panel you use a couple of brad nails. So the screws are into the front panel through the side panels, 2 places. And although they don't explicitly say to do it that way, actually they say the opposite. They say to assemble the sides to the front and then slip the back in. And you have to get the alignment of the grooves just right, or that back panel won't slip in probably. And you could just rest it on the back and hope that that causes it to line up, but there's no guarantee there won't be some tolerance issues there. So I just decided to slip the back or the bottom panel in and use it as an alignment jig. So that's in there. Now I have to do likewise for the back panel. This one does not have a groove in it. Okay, that drawer seems to be complete. I've put in 2 nails on the bottom, spaced roughly 3/4 or 1/3 of the way, there we go, from each end, and pretty much the same dimension in the middle. I have a little smeared glue there, which has already dried too much to wipe up. But there we go. So that's a typical drawer. Now to do 5 more like it. By the way, the frame as screwed together is just a parallelogram, and it does not guarantee that the drawer will be straight. Again, you depend on the back panel, but there is a little bit of slop in it. So what I've been finding out is just before I put the nails in, that'll cement the alignment, if you will. I put my square between the front and one side plate and make sure that is true before I drive the nails in. Well, it only took about 40 minutes to make all 8 drawers. They really do go together pretty quickly once I had established the way I was going to do it and the rhythm of doing it. It really just went lickety-split. So if I was doing it according to the instructions, these would be done, but because I used glue on most of the joints, I have to wait for that to dry. I did not glue the masonite bottoms into the drawers except on the back panel, because everywhere else it fits into a slot, and I thought that's more than enough strength. I only glued it at the back where it just lays up against the back panel and only has 2 brad nails to hold it there, so did use glue there. And otherwise I used glue at all joints where the sides and front and rear come together. Alright, first drawer is in there. Nothing stops these from being pulled all the way out. There's no catch or thing where you have to lift it or anything. It's just, they're basically just there to hold the drawer's weight. So far, so good. Okay, that one doesn't want to go in there. What's the problem? Well, this one just goes in hard. It works pretty smoothly and then gets to a tight spot. And I can only gather that maybe one of the slots in the side wasn't milled out enough or something. This one goes in all right. That one's good. Oh, this guy popped out a little bit. This one's also a little sticky for no apparent reason. Well, it looks okay in sort of a log cabin in the woods kind of furniture style. You can get them out to about that far, but because those plastic rails, or those whatever they are that these ride on, don't have the usual extender slides, when you've got the drawer out mostly like this, there's practically nothing supporting these drawers. You know, if you have anything that weighs very much in here, it's going to just break those off probably. I mean, maybe you can get it like 2/3 out and it'll be okay, but this is not a very great design in that regard. These are not intended to hold much weight, and now this one's being problematic. Well, that was the same one that was a little sticky before. So I think they're all right. You could use this in a sewing or crafts room. Stuff that would be in it would presumably be fairly lightweight. Not a lot of... You wouldn't want to use this as a tool chest. I think this would be awful as a tool chest. A bunch of heavy wrenches and stuff in here, forget it. It's not made for that kind of weight. Be falling apart before you know it. This one's also a little stiff. Just don't see why it would be, but there's nothing sticking out in there. It would be rubbing on it. The walls seem flat. I don't know. I wonder if it's possibly rubbing on the bottom of these screws. No, it's way below those. It's just got a tight spot. Anyway, I plan to put it right here where this huge pile of garbage is. Or in this unholy mess over here, I could put it there. Can't get too far over or it'll get in the way of my buffing machine. But one of these two places, if I put it here, it's going to be in front of that tool chest. But it's going to go there or it's going to go here because there's really no other place for it to go. But either way, it rolls around, so shouldn't be a big problem. This isn't where it's going, it's just to get it out of the way until I figure out where it's going. Well, I've managed to load it up already. This is just a first pass. I put all my deck screws on the top. That just about fills a drawer. I have about half a drawer full of drywall screws. A drawer full of little brad nails and a couple larger nails and little pieces of dowel. All sorts of bags of screws that I bought at the hardware store and had spares enough to bother keeping. Just have to sort through them when I feel the need. And these are more packaged screws in boxes and a few specialty types. This one has rivets in the back and things associated with rivets like washers, some hitch pins and large bolts, various machine screws, nuts, T-nuts, other odds and ends like that. This is the drawer that sticks. This drawer, the whole back half of it has things for case making. Hinges and latches and rubber feet and corner protectors. Then there's a bunch of stuff along the front for hanging various things. Hooks and what I call teacup hangers, but that's not their real name. Decorative things, metal braces and brackets. And this one has got just miscellaneous overflow and my collection of mouse traps. So that's not a bad first pass for what I intended to use this for.